industry. It's how do we protect that media ecosystem. But you don't need me to tell you about that. I've got two superb experts who are going to come on stage and do this. So first of all, let's bring to the stage David Indo, co-founder of ID Comms. Yes.
Thanks, mate.
And David's going to give you a small intro, and then he's going to bring to the stage Rob Rakovich, the Global Media Director for Mars. You can clap him now and when he comes on. Yes.
Good afternoon, Festival of Media. Buon pomeriggio, Roma. The media industry, our industry, has never been more exciting and dynamic. Media has never been higher on the corporate agenda. And critically, media's role in driving a business outcome has never been more certain or assured. Yet we find ourselves besieged with doubt. There's conflict and tension everywhere. Our industry, without a shadow of a doubt, is at an inflection point. So what can we do as media and brand leaders to engage, lead, and drive media sustainability? Many brands talk about sustainable business practices, lowering carbon footprints, better packaging. But what about the media, advertising, and marketing industry? What can we do to engage and promote in practices that ensure the long-term health of our ecosystem and our industry? Because we have an uncomfortable truth. The issues that we deal with around non-transparent business practices, digital ad fraud, and brand safety represent the same risks to our industry and our ecosystem as air pollution does to the environment. To share his thoughts and unique perspective on this critical topic is a global brand leader, a progressive media thinker, and a passionate advocate of long-term media sustainability. I'd like to welcome to the stage the Global Media Director of Mars, Rob Rakovich.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, David, for having me. This is a real privilege to be up on stage here talking to you guys and sharing what I kind of see here. Very quickly, who is Mars? What do we do? We are a purpose-driven company. We are diversified across confectionery, pet care, food, as well as nutritional sciences. We are purpose-led. We believe that the world that we want tomorrow starts with the business that we do today, and that our 5 principles drive the way that we build growth responsibly and drive a frontline mentality for all of our associates. We believe that we can actually create value with connections. We do that in the way that we actually approach our growth philosophy, driving one demand and connecting better to our business. And we've been actually driving a better connected media practice, connecting over to creative, connecting over to e-commerce, sales, shopper marketing, etc. And we also believe that how we actually market and who we market to needs to be done with quality and respect and responsibility, and then we've done that with our Mars Marketing Code. And what we've been doing is we've been building a media model that is fit for purpose, so it actually expands to different brand sizes, different market types. It's fit for speed, so we actually use data and agility the right way, and it's fit for the future, and that we actually understand how to actually go to market the right way. This is the idea of getting to the way that we talk about intelligent reach, which is how do we actually build media with intelligence. However, it's not all rainbows and unicorns, guys. I'm going to be absolutely clear and vulnerable with you. The objects are only getting shinier. DTC, we heard that in the last presentation. In-housing, and this debate over, oh, is it control? No, it's oversight and it's ownership, and that's really what people are hungering for. And new technology is to master every 18 months. Who here right now is working on a voice strategy? I'm sure you all are. And the hurdles are only getting higher. So we know that there's an issue with data portability and being able to actually manage across the portfolio of everything that you invest in there's acrimony in the ecosystem. The two major sort of nodes are actually at war with each other, and it's not good. Douglas talked about this yesterday. And when you come to actually thinking about how do you actually invest in media, how do you actually launch a campaign, there are fewer and fewer places to turn. TV is now the Ottoman Empire. It is dying a slow death. 15% declines in reach in major markets. Digital has absolute quality issues. So we're faced with really, really tough questions here about what is it that's actually going on here? And everything that we've been talking about over the last few days has been looking at these individual bottles in all of these breakouts. But what I want to share with you guys today is a heightened sense of consciousness. Being able to actually connect the dots and actually put this system together and actually appreciate it for what it is. So what I want to do is wake you out of your slumber on day 2 of the Festival of Global Media, the only forum for global media that exists in this industry. And my hope here is today is that you walk out of this with a sense of purpose and a sense of action. I've had the very unique opportunity in my career to work in research, and to work in creative, to work in media, to work in agencies, to work in a client organization. And what this has given me is a unique perspective in being able to actually connect the dots, and I really want to help you guys see that. And this is actually a picture of the Earth that's been enhanced by NASA. What this shows to you is massive amounts of pollution that are out there. So those individual bottles that we actually talked about on the beach, there's actually something bigger going on. This is Sol LeWitt's work, one of my favorite artists. You go up to Dia Beacon, which is a great museum in upstate New York, you can actually see this installation. But let's actually start to talk about some of the major pins that are out there, some industry trends. So there's business pressures and cost control. This is nothing that's new to any of us that's in the room. Driving growth and profit is harder and harder today. Second bit is audience fragmentation and revenue pressures. Print media, journalism, local journalism, it's dying, guys. And there's been this rapid rush to digitalize and a shifting influence in terms of who your CMO decides to spend time with. And what that's created, so let's start connecting those dots. Business pressures and cost controls, that's led to a false bottom. In 2015, we had Mediapalooza. That put $30 billion worth of media business into the marketplace, up for tender. Average marketer walked away with around 19% savings across, media inventory and then payment terms. That's big, okay? Now, what also has happened over that time period is that auditors' revenues, Ubiquity, Accenture, guess what? They grew by 30%. Ad tech, 10x over the same time period. You've taken the money out of the nucleus of the relationship and you've pushed it to the periphery. And that periphery is dark. The next thing, audience fragmentation and revenue pressures. Fake news and fake audiences, everybody. 50% of the audience traffic that's out there on a given website is fake. 1 in $4 goes to ad fraud. We are being robbed blind. The rapid rush to digitalization has led to the walled gardens, opacity in terms of, and apathy. You do not have control over your data with the duopoly. You are paying a toll, and you are paying a toll to a cartel that is more nefarious than OPEC. And guess what? The ad buyers, the advertisers, the agencies, we shrug. Scott Galloway tells us it's their business model. It's their business model to actually have their hands around our throats, and that's not good. What's even more problematic is that this stuff actually connects. So a false bottom and a weak agency is unable to stand up against a duopoly. The false bottom rewards fake news because I've got to get a CPM that's unachievable. This is really dangerous stuff, guys, because guess what? We've got agency liquidity and independence in question. What if you actually did a stress test on an agency the way that you did a bank? Data privacy and monopoly, and what is this actually going to mean for the rise of a surveillance state or a private entity? And then societal health and truth. God damn it, guys, it's 2019 and we're dealing with measles because the platforms say, oh, it's freedom of speech. I'm just a platform. I'm not going to actually censor things. And we're dealing with elections that are being undermined in the US, the UK, France, Israel, the list goes on. And while ocean plastic had a very emotive vision, it had an emotive image here, and a 10-year-old was able to implore us to stop using plastic straws. Our industry doesn't have a turtle. Our industry doesn't have something that's actually visible casualty. It's happening slowly around us. And the flowers, the growth that we're celebrating today and the achievements that we're making in media, they're dandelions. Dandelions aren't flowers, they're weeds. And tomorrow we are going to recognize these as the weeds of the industry, the weeds that we've actually flowered and watered. Because reach at all cost, at no cost, is actually reach at all cost. And what we really need is reach with responsibility. This is the purpose of this forum. This is the purpose of the leaders in this industry, is to make sure that we actually build reach with responsibility. This is a beach outside of Mumbai. It took 96 weeks to actually clear it up. And it took the work of charities, governments, volunteers, and corporations to actually do it. And while the challenge that we face in our industry is real and big, it's actually achievable. The will needs to be there. The tenacity needs to be there. So we need that tight partnership. And what are we doing at Mars? Well, we're owning what we can actually control. We're making sure that we resource our agency the right way, that they are able to go into the marketplace and invest responsibly for us. We are working with like-minded marketers. We are partnering with the likes of the WFA, and we are driving change for the better and growth that we can actually be proud of and reach in a responsible way. We can do better, guys. So how do we actually start to clean this mess up? We need to be better and more mutual clients. We need to actually pay our agency. You cannot starve an agency and expect them not to focus on a contract. Doug, you said this the other week at the ANA. The client thinks of the agency as an agent, and the agent thinks of the relationship being bound by a contract, and that's because it is so absolutely draconian nowadays, and it cannot be like that any longer. We need agencies who are honest and transparent, agencies that are not willing to win at all costs, and agencies that are willing to say no and be able to open up the books and drive out any non-transparent business practices. That's what a client wants, an honest partner, somebody who's going to be able to go into the marketplace and act on my behalf. We need a media supply chain that isn't just going to be apathetic to an agency and a client's needs. There's a major fundamental disconnect in terms of what I think of the reputation of my company and what responsibility I need to drive in the marketplace and what somebody who thinks that they're just selling me an impression is going to do. We're having a disjointed, separated dialogue, and that needs to stop. And we need to tear down those walls. Third-party collaboration, third-party integration, it needs to happen. Transparency needs to be driven from the periphery into the center, not the other way around. So, if there's one thing that you guys need to take away from today, is that it's not all about reach at no cost, because reach at no cost is reach at all costs, and what we need is reach with responsibility. Now is the time. Now is the time for all of us in this room to step into our profession. Now is the time to make media not only a source for growth, but a source for good. Because the world that we want tomorrow starts today, with how we do business today. Thank you.
I found that terrifying and inspiring in equal measure. So brilliant. Thank you, Rob. I'm sure there's going to be loads of questions from the audience, but I'm going to start with one question. How do you, as a media leader, how do you change the culture of an organization to pivot away from media being understood and appreciated as a cost, in a narrative that talks about savings, discounts, rebates, to one of value and growth?
I would say, first and foremost, it starts with partnership. And that partnership has to have shared values. I've been very fortunate to have partners in what other corporations would call procurement, we call commercial. Antonio is my co-pilot. He's sitting in the audience over there. His predecessor, Chris Credo, absolutely was willing to take a leap of faith to actually say that media drives business and can actually drive growth. That, along with our research folks, we actually had basically 3 functions coming together and it sort of being curious. And what we did is we co-created a different vision for media, and the agency was able to start contributing to that vision. And what that ended up allowing us to do was actually shrink down change, because look, we can't talk about all of these things in nebulous terms and get people to be like, okay, $1.2 billion worth of media investment, let's just go ahead and put it on the roulette table. It's about shrinking down change with that shared partner vision and actually developing proofs of concept so you actually scale it out and scale it out. And it hasn't happened overnight. I'm like 5 years in, right? And there's still so much more that can and should be done.
Just one separate point, because we could be talking forever. How do you educate and inform your stakeholders internally around that kind of narrative? I think what you've described as a progression is really smart, but how do you then create the intelligence internally that can appreciate good versus not so good?
Yeah. So 2 bits to that question. So first and foremost, again, it comes down to people. Right? Derek Sivers has done an amazing TED Talk in terms of how to actually catalyze a movement. And what you've got to do is figure out who's the catalyst, and then who are the leaders, and then who are the ambassadors, and how do you actually mobilize them to actually believe in the same things and advocate for the same things. So again, it absolutely comes to casting and creating a leadership team that actually has a shared vision. The second bit on that is kind of building the proof. And I think we're really lucky, we at Mars, and you guys have contributed to this over the long term, we have a book yay thick now about how media has actually driven growth, campaign-driven stuff. That's just creative uses of media, strategic investments around media that have actually driven business results. We're an evidence-based marketer. Antonio knows it, Mark knows it, and the audience. We're absolutely obsessed with data. And what we want to do is basically be able to say, A led to B, which led to C. And we've been able to show that through growth results.
Very clear, thank you. I'm going to open it up to the floor. Any questions for Rob?
Ben's got one.
Ben.
First of all, great presentation, thank you. Yesterday when I talked about how the WFA is trying to drive change, afterwards I was accused of being utopian, which is okay. You talk about creating a vision with your commercial team and talk about, a shared vision with your commercial team and your agency, and you're sort of in the middle navigating that. When it comes time to do things like we're going to pay the agency fairly and they're going to be fully transparent and not mask where where the rubber hits the road, how does that get executed?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely great question, Ben. And again, it's not all rainbows and unicorns, because what we had to do was sell in, look, we need to pay this amount to actually get something fair. And it's not to say that when it came time to sign the check, that people didn't all of a sudden get cold feet and sort of say, ooh, well, I could really use that money and put it back towards earnings. And we had to remind people, this is not the time to relitigate things because we are on a transformation journey. And if you actually want X% growth out of media, you need to be able to sign that check. So what we've had to do is actually be provocative reminders and warm up those cold feet because, you know, it's carry through at the end of the day. And an organization, any big organization, it's so easy to relax on yourself. Yeah, and what we've had to do and what we are doing is actually running monthly calls where we are looking at the entire ecosystem that we've created on both sides. And have we stayed true to both of our promises? Have we stayed true as Mars? Has Mediacom stayed true to their pledge? And we're keeping each other honest. And again, that comes back to one of our 5 principles of mutuality.
Thank you, Ben. We've got 2 down here.
First of all, thanks for a great presentation, really great. Duopoly, I think a lot of people would agree with what you said, but what's the alternative?
The alternative is that we are actually starting to partner with select platforms that are interested in driving quality reach in media, in digital media, specifically some of the guys at Teads, our friends at Unruly, some of the partners that we're actually bringing in and actually saying, hey guys, there's an issue here, we want to solve it, and we want to actually learn, and we want to develop intelligent reach. So we are bringing in partners to actually incubate that at pace. So we are looking to diversify. We are not looking to be held up by that monopoly, well, the duopoly.
Martin?
Thank you very much for that. I didn't think that anybody after Yaz yesterday was able to rouse the room, but really, thank you very much for fighting the good fight and for encouraging us. That's awesome.
Thank you.
I have one specific question because I have a feeling that very few in the room actually disagree with you and think that you're wrong, that we're fine with buying cheap impressions. But here's what I struggle with on a daily basis. There's many clients out there where I feel everybody has a natural tendency to go lower funnel because that's the stuff that's easy to measure. And it's much harder, and it takes a lot of work, as you say, you know, the rainbows and unicorns. It takes a lot of work to go upstream and measure what is truly sustainable growth. And I'd like your advice on that. Is there anything that you would say that I could do, apart from kicking out great work, of course, to encourage people to take that, which is sometimes a leap of faith, to at least invest in the technology and invest in the time it takes to figure out what truly drives sustainable growth? Sorry for a long-winded question.
No, it's a very, very awesome question, and you're absolutely on point to ask it. Again, this is true to us as an organization, just given how evidence-based we are. We are absolutely looking at testing different quality parameters on media. We've actually been diving deep into our viewability data and seeing if there's a linkage between viewability and sales lift, and starting to figure out, like, look, are there, you know, looking at sound on versus sound off, you know, different parameters to figure out, you know, if the size of the website and the scale of it actually affects sales impact. So we are absolutely A/B testing every quality parameter that gets back to the sort of sustainability questions, especially within digital. Now, you know, ultimately, yes, you know, better paid agency, we are going to be looking for higher ROI out of that as well. So I think, you know, when you actually look at the full-on sustainability elements on it, better paid agency, you know, more transparent ecosystem, better quality in digital media, is just figuring out what are the A/B tests around each of those and what are the key measures that you can actually start to look at over time, because this is going to be time series, right? This isn't just going to be a one and done research study and be like, hey, look, a better paid agency did wonderful, so let's just continue doing that. You're going to want to keep them honest. And digital media changes pretty much all the time. I mean, like right now, it's like kind of like YouTube brought back Coke Classic based on sort of, you know, the non-skippable, you know, pre-roll. And, you know, we're going to have to keep an eye on that one as well, because that inventory changes so often as well.
Any more?
one right over there.
Thank you for a very nice presentation. I was just curious, how did you get procurement to be on board with your thoughts?
Antonio?
I actually did not have to try at all. I've had such equal partnership where it's like we talk about each other as a co-pilot relationship, where at certain points in time I'll be, driving the plane, and at certain points in time Antonio will be driving the plane, and that's absolutely fair, and that's the right sort of relationship to have. I've been spoiled, quite frankly, at Mars. I have been. And it's upped my game significantly because I haven't had to have that fight.
Rob, as you know, I love this idea, and I agree with Martin, we need more people at more conferences in your position, encouraging us to think a bit bigger and take a bit more of that kind of responsibility. It kind of follows on a little bit from your question about thinking about it more from the finance perspective. To really change company behavior of a business the size of Mars, you need to do more than just convince procurement or more than just convince your marketing stakeholders. When you start to get up to the board level, and how do we sell this into a CMO that this is really actually something worth doing, right? That on their tenure, this is worth doing, because it's difficult to prove the immediate benefit. How do we get an organization's corporate and social responsibility to embrace this in the way that they might have done with use of plastics and other things? Because again, it's not an intangible. Have you got that thought yet? Because we have to change mindset very, very high up.
Yeah.
I think,
so,
not just in rooms like this.
Every action has a reaction. The brand safety incidents, this is what sort of pushed us to act, and then looking at everything that's been happening with non-transparent practices and sort of my connecting of the dots. Now, thankfully, the CMOs have been sort of cognizant or aware of these things, but more importantly, our head of corporate affairs, who sits on our MLT, the management leadership team, they've been absolutely aware of all of the issues that are going on in the media marketplace. And the steps that we've actually taken proactively, where I've not stood in place and asked for permission. We've driven things between myself and Antonio in terms of some clear positions, and then what we end up doing is getting thanks from corporate affairs. We get thanks from the rest of the MLT. We get thanks from the Mars family, because what we've been doing is taking a frontline mentality and treating the business as if it were our own. And I think that if we are to say that we are only as good as our reputations as corporations, and the only difference between what we would sell versus Amazon Basics in terms of batteries or something like that, it's brand, it's reputation. And if you're not taking that stewardship, then you're failing. And so I do absolutely think that this is, CMO needs to take responsibility from a fiduciary perspective. What is my money investment actually fueling? And then the corporate responsibility element on it, the corporate affairs, it's got to take the reputation element on it. Now, obviously, those two things are absolutely intertwined, but there are definitely two stakeholder audiences for this within corporate America, absolutely.
Rob, I've got one final question for you.
Yes.
For those in the audience that want to act, but aren't quite sure how to start, what would your advice be?
My advice would be to start having the internal dialogue, honest internal dialogue, and trying to figure out, are there pain points here? Are people aware of the issue? Are people concerned with the issue? And then I think the next conversation to be had is, quite honestly, with the agency, and having an open and honest dialogue about have we been fair in this relationship, and are we concerned about what's happening further downstream, and what are we actually going to do to restore the relationship, the partnership, and then how do we actually make sure that we safeguard the investment and the unintended consequences that come around with it, because all of those connecting of the dots, That's the unintended consequences, and really what we have to do is heighten our conscientiousness and take responsibility for it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Rob Rakowitz.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done, mate. Well done, buddy. Good man, sir. Good stuff.
Thank you, gentlemen. Excellent stuff. Brilliant. Thank you, Rob.